Welcome, everyone. We have Carmen Perez from Make Real Sense and Much here to talk to us about budgeting today. So she did not grow up getting the money thing. She pulled herself out of a big pile of debt and has since been talking about money stuff online. And that's how she and I connected, was through, I don't know, Instagram, Twitter, the personal finance online space, and thought that this would be a great conversation to have for women's personal finance, especially with inflation and just like the cost of existing right now being so expensive. Having a sense of where your money goes is, I'd say, probably more important than it's been in the last like 10 years. So with that, Carmen, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for this. And again, thank you both for having me. I am so excited to be here. This has been a community that I've been following for quite some time. So thank you. And yeah, I'll just kick it off with just quick background about myself, and I start rambling, so please cut me off whenever that happens. So back in 2016, I was working in finance and doing all the things. I was traveling, I was having a good time. I love to volunteer. That was like my thing to do. And I would spend a lot of money doing it, but it selfishly made me feel really good just to be able to do different things in the world and different parts of the world, and connect with other people, just traveling, living my best life. And then I met my partner, and we were just having a good time in New York City. And bam, 2016 rolls around. I'm getting sued for a student loan. It was $30,000. And this was the shock of my life. So I'll just fast forward. I mean, I'll backtrack just a little bit before 2016, but up until this point, I had very little saved. I actually had no money saved. I had cashed out of a 401k account when I was working at Morgan Stanley. I was paying 18% interest on my car loan. So, no amount of money can help you pay. I'm driving a Jeep. I have a 2010 Jeep, Jackie the Jeep, I call her. I was paying, almost $500 a month to have her. My baby now is paid off. But I had terrible credit. I had a job offer rescinded because of my bad credit. And then fast forward to 2016, everything caught up with me, all of my bad money habits, when I got sued. And just full disclosure, I had Jesse the Jeep. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So full disclosure, I was working in finance up until this point. I was making relatively good money. I was in Florida making $50,000, and then my salary went up from there when I moved to the city, initially making 80, and then I went into the low 100s. I've never exceeded $120,000 at any point in my career. I actually made that for 3 months. But just to give you some, details of like kind of where my journey was, when I was making 80,000, I had a lot of student loan debt. My car payment was $500. My rent in the city was, I don't know, 900, 1,000. So a lot of my paycheck, a lot of my take home pay was already just getting eaten up by all of the costs that the interest on the bad credit was costing me. There we go. I'll just say it like that. So fast forward 2016, I get this notice in the mail, and I'm looking down at it. My hands are shaking. I didn't really understand what was happening. So I actually had to go to Google and see like what this text actually meant. And it was the start of a lawsuit. And that was for my $30,000 student loan. So had all these poor decisions, and that's a lot, I think, like rooted in seeing my single mother just figure it out, and I always was able to figure it out regardless of what my circumstance was, and still do what I wanted to do. And then in 2016 that had to change, because now my livelihood was on the line. Working in financial services, the thing that they do is run your credit, and that's why I had already had a job offer rescinded. So when I got my credit ran, if they showed a judgment or a bankruptcy on it, it'd be hard for me to get another job anywhere else. So I had to focus on the student loan and getting sued. And that's where I started learning how to budget. Now, if I could have paid this off with the money that I was making in a year, I would have done that, but it took 2 years and 9 months. And that's also, I mean, pretty fast. But I also got a side hustle. I stopped contributing to my 401k. I did a lot of things that I would not recommend. But I had to, hustle as fast as I could to pay off this $30,000 student loan. So I'm going to pause there. Does anyone have any questions? Because I know there's a lot. There's a lot of details in there.
I mean, the fact that you got, I feel like that's the part of your story that always just like hits me. The fact that you can actually get sued over non-payment of a student loan. Like that just seems like wild. And
it was a private student loan. let me say, yeah. First.
Well, but I think a lot of us have or had private student loans. So I've not heard anyone else talk about it, but I am certain it happens way more frequently. And I think that's probably part of the, we don't talk about money stuff, especially the stuff that we might feel shame around. And so the fact that I've never heard anyone else talk about being sued over a student loan non-payment, I feel like it's just like, it's 2022 and we still feel like we can't talk about our money mess ups.
No, and I was drowning behind closed doors. I wasn't talking to my friends about it. They didn't know that I had gotten an offer rescinded. I had said that I was going to go get a job. And then I was like, oh, I just changed my mind. I didn't tell them, hey, they pulled the offer because I had bad credit. Now they know that. But it's all just kind of like, it was a lot of shame. And that's what led to that point in 2016, me not talking about my finances and where I was, and is, unfortunate. So it happened. I'm thankful for it now, just because that put some fire under me to just do the things that I needed to do and really get a grip on my finances in like a very productive way.
So what did that look like? I mean, had you been budgeting or not very well, or just not at all? And then you went.
No, I was paying. So I was living quote unquote paycheck to paycheck. And I think there's two camps on this. There are the people that have disposable income that are maxing every single cent of their paycheck. That was me. And I just wasn't organized around my money. And I was constantly robbing Peter to pay Paul type deal. When I had actual disposable income, I just wasn't being intentional around it. The other camp that I think, exists with the true authentic paycheck to paycheck is you're not making enough. It's not a livable wage that you're earning in order to just cover your basic needs. So I just want to make it sure it's clear. I have two very big distinctions on that. I think a lot of people, I would say 50-50, the people that you hear saying, I live paycheck to paycheck, they actually have disposable income. They're just not being organized and intentional around it. And then there's that true paycheck to paycheck where really it's skill up, government policy, job change are the only things that are going to really move the needle there before being able to like actually budget. So I want to make sure I give that caveat, but you can't budget your way out of like, or like literally like systematic kind of things going on. Like that is a separate, totally different issue. So that I don't want to speak to budgeting in terms of like, if you feel like budgeting is going to like solve all your problems, that's not it, especially if you don't have the disposable income. When I say disposable income, that means like, you're spending $1,000 on Grubhub every single month just because you want to, and you can actually, meal prep and do all the things. So I just want to make sure that that's very clear. What I did though, is I wasn't budgeting at all, and I had to figure it out. I was like, what the hell? Where do I actually start? What do I do? How do I do the things? Because I need to figure this out very quickly. So I got a lawyer. She bought me some time. And I started getting to work. So I started researching all of the things on like, how do I actually budget? Because people talk about that, but there's like, I didn't know there was frameworks out there. There's that 50, 20, 30 budget that's like not for me. I needed to know every single penny and what was going on. And that's when I honed in on the zero-based budget framework. And that's where I started my budgeting journey. And it actually helped. I stumbled for a few months, but then I finally figured it out. And, it did wonders in my finances. I'll say that.
What do you think? What were the big stumbles when you were first figuring out how to budget?
I didn't know what the hell, like, I was like, so how do I actually like do this? What do I do for food? Like, how do I actually like implement this thing and like make it meaningful? So the zero-based budget framework is essentially sitting down, and I'm salaried. So it was easy to, I was salaried. It was easy to kind of forecast my income. It wasn't going to change over the course of a year. So you spend every single dollar on paper before it comes in your bank account. And I basically treated that like a spending list throughout the month on how to spend my money. So I baked in goals like extra to debt, because I have to, put all this money towards debt. And that was my number one goal. And then everything else fell under that. So when I first started out, the stumbling blocks were like, how much do I actually budget for food? What does that actually look like? So I went back through 3-4 months of bank statements to understand how much I was actually spending on food, like my baseline, my level set. And then I had to start tweaking towards that. So that was a stumbling block. I don't know. Let's say, for instance, I started with like, I'm going to try to stick with $100 a month for food. Super unrealistic. Everyone
Beans and
it.
rice.
Yeah, beans and rice. Everyone does it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you go from, you spend $1,000 on Grubhub to, I'm just going to go into deprivation mode, $100. Like, it's not realistic. So, I gave myself something like $300. That wasn't my level set. So that was just getting in terms of like good boundaries that were realistic and sustainable was tough at first, but then I started figuring that out. You just have to start somewhere.
Yeah. Well, and so I'm not a strict budgeter. I'm more of a like money tracker. I feel like it's kind of a different, but when you talk about going from like Grubhub every day to $100 a month, after I had my kid, I was buying lunch every single day at work, because that was my time, away from kid, away from life. And I was just spending a ridiculous amount. So instead of trying to go to like, I'm just going to pack my lunch every single day forever, I was like, all right, I am going to allow myself twice a week to start with, which seems ridiculous when you talk to people who are like, oh, I never buy takeout. I never do anything like that. But, the idea of trying to go cold turkey on spending
it's painful. And I was forced. I had a mechanism. I'm getting sued. They're either coming for my bank account or I'm going to lose my job. That's it. That's all there was to it. But if I didn't have that, I would have fallen off if I didn't like bacon stuff. So I had date night. That was full stop. Like, I don't care how much I'm getting sued for and I don't have the money. My wife and I, date night was a thing. So every 2 weeks, it would just be a little bit of money, like $60, but we'd at least have that to do whatever. And then, I went ham on, making sure I brought my lunch every day, but we'd have enough to do like dining out. And and this is before we got married, she had to come on the journey with me. We'd have some where we could go out maybe like twice a month, 3 times a month, whatever that looked like. So nothing like, absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. And I see like Starbucks, if that's your thing, like keep it. I think people start going ham sandwich in their budget hard to try to get to those goals as fast as possible, but it's not sustainable. And the best thing that you can do is, bake in those little treats, or at least like reduce them just a little bit. That's it. That's all you got to do.
Yeah. So I see we've had some more folks join us. So if you want to drop in the comments where you're from and what kind of money budgeting questions you've got, feel free. With the new original folks, it seemed like we were very East Coast heavy. So curious if that's still the case. So you said that your wife went on this journey with you. What did that look like with her?
We had a great time. There were some times where it was just like, absolutely cannot do it because these are my goals, and she respected that. I can't say it was like all heart, stars, and rainbows. Definitely not. Because it's not fun. So right before, as I started getting on this journey, she was like, okay, this is inspiring me. I'm going to do all of the things with my finances. She got completely out of debt. And, we were at now 2 different levels, right? But she had had a smaller journey right before me. So it was kind of trying to figure out how to balance that. And again, that's not, I wanted the date night in there. It's important to keep the date night in there, just any period. But that's another reason why there was some things baked in, because I also have a partner, right? And she enjoys doing things and I can't always shut it all down. So it was a very sustainable way to keep both of us happy and a level of compromise. Because if not, I wouldn't have had date night. That would have been extra money towards my debt. I could just sit at home, code all day, and that'd be my life,
Did you have shared finances at that point, or were you completely split or somewhere in between?
So we're always split, always have been. When we got married, we have a joint savings account for joint goals. And that's when kind of to your point of not being a strict budgeter, or just, I believe in kind of a happy medium, especially if you have disposable income and you're doing good. If you're tracking towards all your goals, you don't necessarily need to budget. This is to hone in, do a spring cleaning almost of your finances if you do it once or twice a year. So, maybe that's another budgeting camp that we can talk about. But we had split finances. We were splitting everything down the middle. And yeah, that's it. We have a joint bills account that we put the money in, that we split to go to the bills, and we have a joint savings account. But that wasn't getting funded because we were, saving eventually. And during that journey, started saving for wedding.
So someone's asking, not sure if I should budget based on take-home pay or not.
Okay, so I budget take-home pay. I'm a big fan of that. And it's the main question: if your income slightly variable, if you have overtime, I think it's good because it's not consistent. So I would always budget towards the baseline. And then whatever that overtime is, it's cool. That's very nice. Put that towards your goal or the overflow and whatever bills that you have. Hopefully that answers the question.
And then another question: I'm 32 and just got my first 401k and salary, but have been prioritizing paying off credit card debt and building a mini emergency fund above putting all my money into the 401k. Where do I start? Am I really behind?
No, you are absolutely not. So you are absolutely not. Keep going ham, hard after that emergency fund. I know I keep saying ham, sorry. Do the emergency fund that thing. I was unemployed in 2020. I got laid off from my job. It was something that we needed. I have my own separate emergency fund. We have a kind of joint savings for goals, but that's the last line of defense for us. So no, you're not behind. Please don't think that. In terms of even my career, I switched careers after I was 30. So you're never far behind. I didn't hit over $100,000 in my investment account until well into, I'm 35 now, probably somewhere in between, 32 and 35. So you are not behind.
And that is way ahead. 100 grand in your 401k at 35 is,
ahead of a lot of people.
It's so easy to look at those, averages at age, and you have to realize that averages mean that's not the middle. That's the people who put in gobs and gobs of money pulling up that average. If we were actually looking at the median amount, you can find those numbers, and the median amount is so much lower. Yeah. No. And that's so one, you're not behind. I just want to say that congratulations, getting the 401k, the salary, you're doing all of the things, but I would highly stress just focusing on building that emergency fund, especially right now. Again, this is coming from someone that got laid off in 2020. Because I didn't contribute at all in 2020, I went ham last year. I keep saying that. I went hard, and if I'm not going to say the rest of it, it means it's an acronym for something. I tried to max out my 401k last year, and that was all through budgeting. I had to cut back on a lot of different things to be able to do that. Okay. We are paying $16.25 a month in interest on our mortgage. Rate is 4.365%. I'm trying to throw an extra $1,000 a month at the principal, should I be putting that in any kind of investment account?
A great question. I am not a registered investment advisor. Off the top of my head, I don't want to give like blanketed advice just because I don't know all of the full circumstances or numbers. But general rule of thumb is like, if you can get more in the market relative to the interest that you're paying on your debt, then it might be wise to, essentially like you can offset that by investing. So that's just a kind of a general rule of thumb. That's not investment advice. So I don't want to be negligent.
And I'm going to chime in on this too, because we have a super, super low interest rate on our home at this point. We're at 2.375% actually. But we have been paying extra. That was an agreement with my husband when we refinanced in 2020. We didn't want to add length of time to the mortgage. But I am going to say that whatever you're going to commit to is probably your best decision. So can you long-term make more money in the market than overpaying on your mortgage? Probably over, 10, 20, 30 years. But are you actually putting that same amount of money in the stock market, or are you spending half of it? So if you for sure are going to put $1,000 a month toward your mortgage every month, but if you don't do that, you only end up investing 500, then stick to paying off your mortgage.
There you go. Great. There you go.
Personal finance is personal, and it's really mental. Like the numbers are great and all, but you need to figure out what works best for you.
You got to do the things that you're going to do. And also equally too, it's like, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I like, if you're going to try to, if you're just like, ooh, I really want to do both, like do both, come up with a percentage. But to Angela's point, like if you're doing it, like do it. Like if you're saying I'm going to put 700 extra to the mortgage and 300 to investing, cool.
Any recommendations on dealing with have to buys with inflation? I just went grocery shopping and I can coupon, but it seems inefficient with my time. It feels like 1,000 paper cuts right now compared to the big expenses. It does feel like that right now, doesn't it?
That's a great question. I would like to source tips from the community on this, because I mean, it's couponing, buying in bulk, like it's tough. It's tough. I just feel like, if you can garden, Angela, I know that you have your stuff, like that's a great way. That's a great way to do it.
But it only starts to pay off like years down the line. Like when you first start gardening, it's not a money saver. But like I've been saving seeds for like years and years, and I've got my bed set up. And so like the kale and the garlic and the eggs and all of that, like they kind of just run themselves now. But gardening is not necessarily a money saver for a lot of people. It's great.
You have to be agree. I couldn't do it. I was killing everything. So didn't work out for me. Sorry. That's not much help there. It's really tough right now during inflation. So if you can buy in bulk, you're doing what you need to, coupons, buying the deals, meal planning or prepping to what's in the circular. It's probably going to be
finding your favorite really cheap dinners. So like my family eats what we call fancy ramen probably once a week. So we get just like the cheap ramen from the Asian grocery, and then I will go pick garden veggies. So usually that's like kale and green onions, and grab an egg from our chickens and drop that in. And, it's like $1 a person per meal. So, that's once a week that we are spending significantly less on our dinners. So, that may not be your choice, but maybe it's basic spaghetti with like 1 pound of ground beef.
Just about to say spaghetti. Yeah. Like I think everyone's parent to some extent, like that was the leftover for 4 or 5 days easily.
Yeah. So that's, I think also where trying to coupon and be perfect on everything, like there are certain things that you're going to save more money on. Like if you've got a lot of credit card debt and you can do a budget or a balance transfer to a 0% card, as long as you do stick to that and pay it off, like that's going to be a bigger savings than the coupons you're going to get over the month.
Yeah. I love that. Those are those $1,000 questions and not the like, $2, $4 trade-offs.
Yeah. Looking at comments, when you were paying off the student loan debt, how did you mentally and emotionally give yourself grace for your previous spending?
I was, during that time, I was actually extremely stressed. I could have sworn half of my hair was like falling out. I was under an immense amount of stress. I won't even lie. I was so stressed out about the current situation that I didn't even think about, what was going on. I don't regret like buying a bunch of stuff and donating it. I don't regret any of that. It was just in that moment when I was paying down my student loans, like the grace was like, I messed up and this is the only thing that was going to bring me back into focusing on like doing what I needed to do. Yeah, that's it. Like it was embarrassing at first, and then I just got over it very quickly. Cause again, I don't regret like having the ability or being able to go and travel and do different things and donate stuff. And like, that was just my ethos. That's what I wanted to do. And I don't feel bad. And it would be one thing if I was like going out and buying yachts and doing like crazy, like I'm not, Angela, you might have seen it. My shoes are like all fucked up, before back in the day when I was going to work, like I'm not very materialistic. So I didn't have any regrets about my actual spending. It just was like very stressful in the moment when I was getting to.
Well, and I think that's almost more stressful too, when you don't have like, you didn't overbuy on a house, you didn't overbuy on a car, I think a lot of the like dramatic debt payoff stuff, you find out that somebody had like a giant, 4,000 bedroom house for, a family of 3, and then they downsized to 1,000 square feet, and that saved them like thousands of dollars a month. And they went from the like $800 a month car payment to, a cheaper paid off vehicle. Like I think it's so much harder when you don't have those big things that you can get those quick wins. And I think most of us probably are in the second camp of not having the huge things to be able to downsize.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I had good credit, I would have refinanced my car. But the problem was I didn't. And I was working on that. And 18% interest is killer. I think it was like 18.5 actually. So
yeah. The car payment thing. Yeah. Can't necessarily sell your car and pay off the loan. You may be stuck where you're living. And I think that makes it a lot harder than when you've got something big that you can just shed.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
So, the rice and beans suggestion.
Rice and beans, beans and rice.
Do we want to have a 5-minute detour to talk about the gazelle intense? I feel like we've kind of danced around it a little bit.
I mean, so I will say that was like that was one of the initial, and then there was someone else in the personal finance community that got me like, okay, cool, I'll figure it out. And then quickly that changed, obviously. And is another reason why I've created this, right?
Yeah.
Because and there's so much stuff now too that I'm learning, like the pricing is crazy on that platform by just, anyways, Gazelle Intense just isn't, I mean, it works for some folks. I'm not a fan of.
For those of you who may not be familiar with Gazelle Intense, it's the idea that like eat beans and rice like all month, go find a second job and hustle with every last hour you have. Definitely do not budget in the date nights. Do not budget in any kind of takeout. Just basically be miserable and all out until you pay off your debt.
Yeah.
And
don't sign up for opt out of student loan forgiveness.
Yeah. But I think there are a lot more reasonable ways to go about paying off your debt and budgeting in general. And I'd say for most people, it probably doesn't work. Honestly, like we talk about how it works for some people, but honestly, so many stories I have heard of people who have gone the like super intense debt payoff, and either they get part way and then they just totally give up and go back to their old ways, or get debt free and then loosen up and go right back to where they were. So the idea is, I think there are better ways to be, sustainable long-term with your money. So I think this is probably the time to pivot to talk about Much, your new project. You want to share?
Yeah, so it's what I needed when I started paying off debt. And it bakes in everything basically that I learned about during like my debt-free journey and payoff journey, and kind of gave me this, just I guess, the stability. I created a bunch of Excel spreadsheets. People started buying those, and basically it's the Excel spreadsheet version, just in an actual application. So after I became debt-free, I saved a bunch of money, quit my job, and learned how to code, and transitioned into the technical world. And I was like, this is something I've always wanted to build. I wanted to be someone that built something that was like from lived experience, and not just like, oh, I'm going to put this together and see if people purchase it, or, whatever that looks like. So Much is a community-based social budgeting application. It's a zero-based budgeting framework that, again, takes all the parts of my journey that I learned and worked well for me, and baked it into an application. So when you come on the platform, you can create a zero-based budget for free. It's, not gazelle intense. You don't got to do that. It's also just a way for, folks, you can do a manual free budget. It's portable for you. So when you're out on the go, if you are the person that kind of tracks your expenses, you can just pop it in the app, and it gives you some, at least gives you a cool looking UI, a little more portable than a spreadsheet. The flip side of that is sustainability. That's what we've talked about this whole time. On the app itself, when you come in, you can connect your bank accounts, and it will tell you how much you've been spending. So you don't have to do that exercise of like, what's my baseline? It'll tell you how much you've been spending over the past 12 months in a particular budget category automatically. And then on the platform, you can only reduce your spending overall, your take-home pay income, by 10%. That's it. You can only go up to 10%. So that can look like, going from $100 in average every single month with Starbucks to 90. And then over all the budget categories and of areas in which you spend money, there's a number that'll show you at the top. It's called your monthly savings. And if you can stick with this new plan that we provide you with, you're able to save money. And then to Angela, your point of just being intentional about that savings that you actually have, putting that towards a goal, putting that either extra towards your debt, extra to investing, extra to savings, whatever that looks like. So we automate that, the harder parts of like where folks try to figure things out, that pulling down 12 months of, or 3 months of like bank statements, and going through and automatically trying to figure out what's what and what you spend money on. We do that for you. We track it throughout the month, and yeah, you can come on, track goals. There's webinars, all the things. But yeah, I was just like, it's something I needed when I was going through the journey. And I hope it's like fast tracks people a little bit more.
Yeah, well, and I think that's where it's important to have options from people who have actually lived it and realize like what you actually need, because I feel like a lot of the like big name people around budgeting, maybe once upon a time they had to do something like this 30, 40 years ago, but life looks very different now. And I think it's important to have a framework that comes from somebody who's more realistically have gone through like what life looks like now.
Yeah. And from a frame or a reference point of like, just not being like an old white male in the space. There's a lot of folks like that in the personal finance community. And again, it may have not been lived experience. I don't know. But I'm trying to put my best foot forward for communities, especially marginalized communities. And I think this is the way that I can do that. And I'm always in there, so I can answer your money questions.
Yeah, so someone's asking for the use Much. I'm gonna, here, I can get it in the chat.
Oh, I was gonna say, I put it.
Okay.
And we got a coupon code for you all, so.
Oh, okay, you beat me to it.
Oh, I
So when you say there are webinars attached to it, what kind of webinars are you doing?
Yeah, so we just kicked one off with Nika from Debt Free Gonna Be. She did a full one on PSLF. I always get that acronym, and student loans, the forgiveness stuff. But there'll be stuff on investing. I mean, this platform we just launched August 15th. So we'll be adding on, modules and webinars for folks to be able to join. But you'll have access to that. And the PSLF and student loan one was like really big. I mean, Nika's massive in this space for student loan forgiveness, all things that, and just having her on the platform to be able to explain it to community members, like where they can just replay it however many times they want.
Yeah. So if you joined now, would you be able to go back and watch that?
Oh yeah.
webinar?
Yeah.
Okay.
They just sit in the portal. Like
Yeah.
they're there.
So it sounds like instead of it just being a budgeting app, this is much more of like a community budgeting experience versus like doing the thing all by yourself. And I mean, I think that's, when it comes to anyone who is a content creator in the personal finance space, we've all learned that trying to do your money stuff alone just doesn't work well. That, I had been a creeper on blogs and forums and whatnot for literally 7 years before I started Tread Lightly, Retire Early. And I knew a lot of the stuff. I read all the things and I did okay, but my money stuff really started to change once I got more actively committed to the community.
Yeah. And it's literally like communities like this, we're baking it in to layering it with a tool that you can, or pairing it with a tool that you can actually do stuff with. So I saw that as a missing piece with any, budgeting application out there. There was no community attached to it. So you're doing things in silo. And it doesn't work like that. Anytime you go to do anything, you're going to call up your friends or your parents and ask them for recommendations on X or should I do Y? And it's nice to have communities like this and like, much to be able to ask other people, like, what do you think? And most of the advice that's given is not nefarious. It's just like, hey, this is what happened in my experience. This might benefit you. Drawing on that collective wisdom.
Yeah. Collective wisdom. I feel like that's what women's personal finance is all about. So like, I get it. I think we are all way more successful when we do things as community than trying to be the lone person hanging out and doing things. Does anyone else have any questions for Carmen about budgeting in general, about her debt payoff story? We are closing in at the end of our time. So if anyone has any questions, that would be a great time to ask them.
To email me.
Okay.
I'm going to throw that in here. Oh, it's there. I forgot I made this. It's there. But yeah, feel free to email me anything, like getting sued is not fun. It's
do not recommend.
I do not recommend. I did all kinds of side hustles from there. I was an arm model. I got $300 from a shoot to do something for a cosmetic company. Like I was picking up anything that I could.
You were an arm model. I feel like
it was only one shoot. Yeah, it was lipsticks all down my arm. I have to actually like post this again. Yeah, lipstick. I did babysitting, photography, those were my side hustles to get extra money in the door. So I can talk.
Would you go that intense with the side hustling? Were you to do your debt payoff again?
Oh, great question. If I wasn't getting sued, absolutely not. Like it would be a little more sustainable because my job was I was working crazy hours and I just didn't have no. I was already, my day job was, I was working crazy hours. So yeah, it wasn't fun. Like just then Saturday, Sunday, like, oh, I'm going to go do a photo shoot. And then I got to edit these photos. And then, so.
Yeah. When I was paying off my student loans, I was pretty intense, but I was not that intense, but I also did not have a lawsuit hanging over my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would say I probably would go as hard as I did.
Oh, you would?
Yeah. I mean, we didn't have kids yet. I was already married and so had a stable relationship. And I don't know, I was in my early 20s. I felt like I had a lot of energy and there was a time where I was working 2 full-time jobs for a little while.
Oh, yeah. All right.
It wasn't, I didn't do the 2 full-time very long. That would not have been sustainable. But then it went full-time plus weekends and, it was only for a few years. And I think that's the thing too, is depending on how much debt you have to pay off. You know, if you only have to be really focused with like taking on extra shifts or an extra job or something for 6 months or a year, and it's just you, or it's just you and a partner, or, you know, and you feel like you've got the energy, like it can be worth it.
Oh,
But
yeah.
if you're looking at like, you've got to do this for 5 or 10 years without a break, or you've got 3 kids and no partner, or you are already working 60 hours a week at your day job, like I feel like there are times where it can make sense to go a little more intense. And then there are some times where it's like, no, you're doing your best. Like
Yeah.
we also need to live through our, you know, day-to-day lives too.
Yeah, it definitely, that's a great, just like point that you made. I feel like I mean, me personally, like I was working like 60 plus hours minimum at my actual day job. So that's why I was just like, there'd be no way. But it's important to know, like when you sit down and you look at the numbers, like question, why are you racing towards this finish line, trying to get there so fast? That's why I'm kind of like anti-gazelle mentality. Like why are you racing towards this and like stressing yourself out, especially if you see your numbers and it's like, cool, this journey's going to take a little bit longer with me giving everything that I got. So I might as well just like enjoy the ride while I'm, you know, not necessarily enjoy it, but you get what I'm saying? Like if it's going to be, you know, 5, 6, 7 year payoff. Hi, oh my goodness. Hi. So cute. But yeah, like you just gotta make it sustainable regardless of whatever that looks like. So if it's going to be 6 months and you want to jumpstart your emergency fund and you got the time, effort, energy to do it, by all means, go for it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And yeah. Okay. I don't think that was a question, just a comment. All right. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. And if you have any questions for Carmen, she dropped her email here. She's real active on Instagram under Make Real Sense. And otherwise, have a wonderful rest of your day. This will be up on our YouTube. So if you want to share it with anyone, feel free. This is not limited just to women's personal finance community members.
Thank you so much, you all. It was nice meeting everyone, and take care.